Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. We are starting our Pac-12 football predictions today, and our first team fell just short of the Pac-12 Championship last year, but returned 17 starters and looked like prime college football playoff contenders. They are the Washington Huskies. It was a somewhat disappointing year for the Huskies as Washington went 10-3, including a Fiesta Bowl loss to Penn State just 1 year after making the college football playoff. But I really like this Washington team, and I think they certainly have the potential to make their second playoff appearance in the past 3 years. They returned 8 starters on offense and 9 starters on defense. I think this team has the potential to be better than that playoff team we saw in 2016. They're going to be led by Jake Browning at quarterback. Feels like he's been at Washington forever, but he's just 1,117 yards away from being the all-time leading passer in Washington history. So he should break that hopefully by week 4 or 5 if he can put up some big numbers. And some people even have him pegged as a dark horse Heisman contender. So they have a very solid quarterback. You got Myles Gaskin at running back, who is just 52 yards away from being the #1 overall leading rusher in Washington history. He could potentially break that in the season opener against Auburn. They have Hunter Bryant and Aaron Fuller returning at wide receiver and 4 offensive linemen return. So this is going to be a very solid offense from a team that averaged 36.2 points per game last year. And with Gaskin and Browning at running back and quarterback, this is going to be a very dangerous Washington team. And then they have Chris Peterson at head coach, an offensive mastermind. So he's going to definitely know how to use these guys and hopefully run up the score on a couple of these teams. On defense, they're going to have Ryan Bowman and Greg Gaines on the defensive line, so some leaders there. They're going to have Tevis Bartlett and Ben Burkervin, linebackers there. And they have 4 returning starters in the secondary. They got Byron Murphy, Jordan Miller, JoJo McIntosh, and Taylor Rapp. And this was a Washington defense that only allowed 16.1 points per game last year, and they returned 9 starters from that team. So I really do believe, even though they lost some big starters last year, like Vita Vea last year going in the first round of the NFL draft, this could be a Washington team that I do think could be better than that playoff team that we saw back in 2016. And they kick things off with Auburn on September 1st, a very highly anticipated matchup on opening weekend. Some are considering this, a potential play-in game for the college football playoff. Auburn and Washington both should be top 10 teams, maybe top 15 teams, but very highly ranked teams to start off the season. And some are saying the loser of this is probably going to pretty much write their ticket out of the college football playoff race, because odds are Washington or Auburn, regardless of what happens in this game, is not going to run the table and go undefeated over the course of the regular season. But the winner of this is going to have a big-time win to add to their resume. I like Washington to get the win here over Auburn. Yes, Auburn does have Jarrett Stidham and some very solid wide receivers. I do think their defensive line is one of the best in the nation with Marlon Davidson and Derrick Brown. So maybe this Auburn team can bottle up Myles Gaskin, prevent him from breaking that record in just week 1, and have to force Jake Browning to win this game through the air. I have a lot of faith in Chris Peterson. You're going to have 2 great offensive-minded coaches going at it with Gus Malzahn at Auburn and Chris Peterson at Washington. But I just think Washington just has a lot more experience going into this game. Auburn is a solid team, probably the second-best team in the SEC West. But I think Washington's going to get the win over the Tigers here. I know some people disagree with that. I think it's going to be a great game, a potential for a high-scoring game. And like I said, I just think I like Jake Browning a little bit more than Jarrett Stidham to win this game through the air, because this Washington defense should not be taken lightly. So a big-time win for the Huskies over Auburn. That would send the Tigers to their 3rd straight loss in Atlanta, losing in the SEC Championship game, the Peach Bowl against Central Florida, and now to Washington. They get a win over North Dakota, luckily not North Dakota State, just plain old North Dakota. And then on the road at Utah. Last year's game, a thriller, 33-30 victory for Washington. They scored 10 points in just 58 seconds in the 4th quarter. They won on a game-winning field goal at the very end of the game. But Utah, certainly not a team they want to overlook. 2 years ago when they played at Utah, they only won that game 31-24 on their way to the college football playoff. But the Utes returned Tyler Huntley at quarterback along with 8 returning starters on the offensive side of the ball. Running back Zach Moss, who rushed for 1,173 yards last year. And they have 3 upperclassmen in the secondary. So this is a Utah defense that only returned 6 starters, but it's still going to be pretty solid. Kyle Whittingham is going to do a great job with these Utes teams. Should be able to compete in the Pac-12 South. Despite this game being on the road, though, I think Washington's going to be able to go on the road and get a win over the Utes here. We saw last year it was a close game. Utah certainly going to be a threat in the Pac-12, so they don't want to overlook this game, especially with it being so early. They're going to be battle-tested having that game against Auburn. I like them to get the win over Utah in what should be a close one. And then Arizona State. If you remember last year, Arizona State handed Washington their first loss of the season, and it was a really costly one because I think had Washington lost to Stanford only, they lost to Stanford later on in the year, they would have still made the Pac-12 Championship, maybe still would have been in the hunt for the college football playoff. Arizona State, not a great team last year. They lost 13-6. They shut down that very dangerous Washington offense. This year are going to be led by Herm Edwards, and they're going to have a very solid offense. I love Manny Wilkins at quarterback. They returned 8 starters on that side of the ball, but only 4 returning starters on defense, 3 in the secondary. So this could be a game where Myles Gaskin goes off. Maybe he can rush for, maybe 200 yards, 150 yards against the Sun Devils. I don't have a lot of expectations for them in Herm Edwards' first year. I think he's going to be the right hire in time. But despite Arizona State winning last year, I think Washington with revenge, being at home, a little more experience, stability at the head coach position, I think they're going to get a pretty capable and easy win over the Sun Devils. So another win there, and they're 4-0. Then they have BYU, a BYU team that really, really struggled last year. Surprised a lot of people going 4-9. They had some health problems, but it was a tough schedule, and really it was no excuse for going 4-9. I didn't expect them to do great, but that was a shocker. If they can stay healthy and keep their quarterback Tanner Mangum healthy, they might be a solid team this year, but not a team that's going to be able to compete against the Huskies, especially with the Huskies having this game at home. I think BYU's set for another rough year. Kalani Sitake, I think, is on the hot seat going into this year. He went 9-4 year one, 4-9 last year. He's going to have to get him back to a bowl game this year, and it's another tough schedule and a lot of questions on both sides of the ball. They should get an easy win over the Cougars. And then on the road at UCLA. That's a game that's really intriguing. A team that's really intriguing this year, led by Chip Kelly, making his return to the college coaching position, returning to the Pac-12. You remember he coached at Oregon, did a great job with them. But this year at UCLA, I don't expect the same success that he had at Oregon, at least in year one. He could get the Bruins up there, but not in year one. They lose Josh Rosen at quarterback, which I know the quarterback isn't everything, but when you lose a quarterback like him or Sam Darnold at USC, that's a big-time loss. So they might be starting Wilton Speight, the transfer from Michigan. We still don't know about that. Last year, though, their defense allowed 36 points per game. So this is a UCLA team that is very inexperienced, has a lot of questions on both sides of the ball, and has a very, very tough schedule, probably the toughest schedule in the entire nation. So despite being on the road, I think Washington gets a win over a UCLA team that's still trying to figure things out under these new coaches. So another win for them. And then a big-time game against Oregon on the road. This is the game that that could potentially determine who wins this North Division in the Pac-12. They're really the front runners of Washington, Stanford, Oregon. This game at Oregon, and the Ducks are coming off a bye. So they're going to be rested. They're going to be hyped for this game. They could be 5-0 coming into this game. And the key for Oregon this year is going to be Justin Herbert, obviously. Their quarterback did phenomenal for them last year before getting hurt and missing 5 games, returning for the last 2. But if he can stay healthy, if the rest of this Oregon team can stay healthy, but more specifically Herbert, this is an Oregon team that can be extremely dangerous, could easily crack 9 or 10 wins. And I'm actually going to give the Ducks a big-time win over the Huskies here. I like that they have a bye week before this game. I like that to home. If it's at Washington, I'd be choosing the Huskies. But this is an Oregon team that, led by Mario Cristobal after Willie Taggart left to take the Florida State job, should be solid. They have stability. You got Jim Leavitt as defensive coordinator. So this isn't just an offensive-minded Oregon team. Their defense is going to be solid, led by Jalen Jelks and Jordan Scott on that defensive line. A lot of NFL talent on this Oregon team that could surprise a lot of people. So I'm going to give Washington their first loss to the Ducks here, and really do not overlook Oregon this year. I'm very excited to see how they do. Then they get Colorado. It's crazy to think that 2 years ago, these were the 2 teams that met in the Pac-12 Championship. Colorado highly ranked in the top 10. Washington won that game, annihilated the Buffaloes, and got to the college football playoff. Last year at Colorado, Washington won 37-10. And I don't expect much competition out of the Buffaloes this year either. They do return their quarterback in Stephen Montez, but a lot of questions on the offensive side of the ball. Besides their quarterback and wide receivers, a lot of questions there. Defense only returned 6 starters. I'm not expecting much out of this Colorado team. Maybe could get back to a bowl game, but it's going to be tough. So another win for Washington. And then California on the road, another team that Washington cannot afford to overlook here. Justin Wilcox really surprised me last year by going 5-7 with the Golden Bears. I was pleasantly surprised. I think I had them pegged to go 1-11. It was a first-year head coach, a lot of inexperience. They lost Jared Goff. I mean, there were just so many things that were pointing down for California, and he came in and did a great job there. And this year they returned 18 starters, 10 on offense, 8 on defense. Ross Bowers put up some big-time numbers at quarterback last year. I expected him to put up even bigger numbers this year. They did just lose within the past few days to Demetrius Robinson, big-time wide receiver that was expected to play a huge role. He's going to transfer to Georgia. But despite that, this is a California team that's still going to be solid with Luke Beck on the defensive line and their entire secondary return. So this game I expect to actually be very, very close. Another potential trap game for Washington. But in the end, I think they're going to own the edge on offense. So despite California returning 10, I still think this Washington offense is going to be solid. And I'm watching more experienced defense, I think, than California. I think they get a narrow win against the Golden Bears there. So a win here. And then Stanford at home. Last year, Stanford upsetting the Huskies 30-22, basically clinching the Pac-12 North for the Cardinal. That game gave Washington their second loss in conference. Stanford went on to the Pac-12 Championship game. In 2016, Washington annihilated Stanford, just blew them out at home. This year, it's back at Washington, but Stanford, not a team anybody can overlook this year. Bryce Love, the Heisman frontrunner, I would think, along with Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin. You got KJ Costello, who came in for Keller Chris last year, who's now going to has now transferred to Tennessee and potentially could start there. So this is a Stanford team that David Shaw has done a great job with over the years. It's going to be solid once again on offense and defense, but it is at home, and I think Washington, along with a couple of these other teams, are going to want revenge over the Cardinal after losing to them last year. It was a close one. I still just think Washington's going to have too much power, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I think this is the game where Washington's defense wins it for them because both Stanford and Washington have solid offenses. But I think in the end, the Huskies bottle up Bryce Love, force KJ Costello to win this game through the air. I don't think he's going to be able to do it. So a big-time home win over Stanford to remain just a one-loss team in conference. Then a bye week, a late bye week. I mean, they played 10 games before their first bye week. So, I mean, Washington really needs it. Luckily, their last two games are against not powerhouses in the Pac-12. You've got Oregon State, you got Jonathan Smith coming in as his first-year head coach. A team that really struggled last year. Jake Luton, that quarterback, I like him at quarterback. I think he's going to put up some decent numbers. But this is the Beavers team that really is going to take some time to get back to a bowl game. Coming off a bye week with it being at home, Washington should take pretty easy care of the Beavers. And then Washington State in the Apple Cup to close out the year, the day after Thanksgiving. Washington State, probably one of the most least experienced teams in the country, especially in the Pac-12. They lose Luke Falk, their star quarterback, had a great year last year before struggling down the stretch. Gardner Minshew comes in from East Carolina, should be the starting quarterback for the Cougars, but only 10 returning starters, including 4 on offense. So we've seen Mike Leach put up some big numbers with this Cougars team on offense. I expect those numbers to decrease a decent amount this year, losing to big-time playmakers. And Washington is 8-1 since 2009 in the Apple Cup. So they have owned Washington State in this series since back in 2009, winning 41-14 last year, 45-17 in 2016. Even though it's on the road, this Washington State team, I don't have a lot of high expectations for. Washington should blow them out of the water like they had the past couple years and gets another win over the Cougars in the Apple Cup, which is going to give Washington an 11-1 record on the year, which is going to be really impressive for the Huskies. Will get them into the Pac-12 Championship game because, despite that one loss, they do have the tiebreaker over Stanford if there's any tie there. So this is a Washington team that I really think could win the Pac-12, and a Washington team that, back in 2016, we were a little concerned because they had a fairly weak schedule, but just barely slipped in as the number 4 team in the country, but has a much tougher schedule this year. You got Stanford, you got Oregon on the road, and then this Auburn game is really going to help them. If they can win this Auburn game, things are going to be looking really good for Washington. By far their toughest games, Auburn at a neutral site, Oregon on the road, Stanford at home. So one apiece, and I've got them winning 2 of the 3 games there. So this is going to be a solid Washington team. I'm excited to see what Chris Peterson can do with them and see if he can get them to the college football playoff for the second time in 3 years. And that would be a great way to send all these seniors out by getting back to the college football playoff. So as always, please go check us out on Twitter at Gridiron Expert, on Instagram at The Gridiron Expert, and always here on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.